This is the second installment of my LGBTQIA2 Spirit series of videos. It is super late. I cannot believe that it's July already, and it's not even like the first week of July anymore. I've mentioned in a couple of videos that I've been working a lot of overtime. It just does not leave me with the time or energy to film, even on the weekends, because I'm just too dang tired. So today is a Tuesday, and I have taken it off work. I had put the request in ages ago because I was supposed to take a friend to have minor surgery, and then their date got pushed back, and I did not bother to cancel having the day off.
You want in?
So, and here comes the puppy. Hi. So, what I'm gonna try and do is film as many of the books or videos in this series today as I possibly can. It is supposed to get up to 98 degrees, which is something like, I don't know, 37 or 38 Celsius. I'm not totally sure. It's flippin' hot. And my house is very old. We have a very limited number of windows that actually open. So all of that to say, it's going to get really hot up here really quickly. I do have an air conditioner running in a different room. I'm not going to turn it off, so hopefully the sound is all right. It's already going to be a little bit weird because I couldn't find the memory chip for my recorder, and I don't have time to tear my house apart trying to find a chip the size of my thumbnail, because if I do that, it's gonna be too hot to film by the time I find it. So we're going soft spoken. We're just using the microphone in my iPhone that I use to film. Yeah, it's just chaos right now, really, is what it is. So let's just get into it. Today is books with gay characters. These are in no particular order, and we'll see how many of them I can remember the authors, because I just have like names written down. So the first book on my list is And This Is How to Stay Alive. This was by a Kenyan author. I read it just a couple of months ago. Shingai Nijiri Kagunda, I think. So I read this book because a friend of mine recommended it. She actually, I think she read it from the library and then liked it so much that she bought a copy. She had it sent to my house so that I could read it, and then she picked it up from me. And I also really enjoyed the book. She described it as being a book about processing grief. She has had a lot more experiences with loved ones passing away than I have, so that's something that she would notice in a book more than I necessarily would. To me, this was a book about being queer in Kenya, and we have an unreliable narrator. So our narrator thinks that she is traveling through time. Her brother is a gay man who committed suicide, and she is going back in time trying to stop that from happening unsuccessfully. And so we're jumping between her at the funeral and her going back in time. And then after the funeral, she's talking to her aunt who had given her this potion that was making it so that she could go back in time to begin with. And we're left with the question of, is she going back in time, or is she just crazy? Because everyone thinks the aunt is schizophrenic. There's also I think mother or I think maybe her grandmother also was considered schizophrenic, and also thought she could travel in time. So I thought it was really great. I came away with, she's just wackadoodle. My friend's interpretation was that she is in fact traveling through time, and I love the fact that it left it ambiguous enough that we could come to our own totally separate conclusions as to what was happening there. And it's very short, so it had that going for it too. It is just a novella. Next, Paris Dalencourt is About to Crumble. This was by Alexis Hall. It's billed as a romance, and I think that is doing it a disservice. I think that this is literary fiction about our main character has severe anxiety, and his roommate has signed him up to be on a British baking show, and it's really, his anxiety is spiraling out of control. He is being flirted with by one of the contestants on the baking show, but the romance feels very shoehorned in. They don't feel like a natural fit for each other. They have a lot of misunderstandings. In the end, to me, it didn't even feel like a happy for now. It felt like two people who should not be together trying to force themselves to be together, and I just did not like that aspect of it. Had this book not had a romance in it at all, or if the romance had been allowed to just naturally run its course and be done, I think it would have been a stronger book, because in terms of being a book about having anxiety, it was so good. Just absolutely nailed it. Right, the next book on my list, The 7 Moons of Mali Almeida by Shihan Karunatalaka. I should practice saying these authors' names before I start filming, and I never do, and then it comes out super awkward. This book takes place in Sri Lanka in the 90s. That is where the author is from. At this time, Sri Lanka is going through a period of civil unrest, verging on civil war. Our main character is dead at the beginning of the book. He is a photojournalist, and he has 7 moons, 7 days to solve his own murder. This book was a difficult read for me. I was really struggling to get into it, and I think I started with the ebook and I could not focus on it at all, so I got the physical book, which helped, but I ended up doing it, the physical and the audio, to get it finished. It's a fairly complicated story. There's a lot of politics involved that I am entirely unfamiliar with. I did not know what was happening in Sri Lanka in the 90s before I read this book. So it was educational in that regard. I wanted it to be a little bit faster paced than it was, because we spend a lot of time with nothing really happening, and that was what was making it so difficult for me to keep chugging along in the story, because the synopsis sounds very exciting, but the actual action was pretty minimal. Nevertheless, it was an enjoyable enough read. I am glad that I read it. It did win the Booker Prize in 2022, so there are plenty of people who think that it is very good, and that cover is fun. So it was worth the effort to get through it, but I'm definitely never going to read it a second time. Next on the list is Black Leopard, Red Wolf by Marlon James. This is a book I'm going to read a second time. I actually listened to the audiobook because it's read by Dion Graham, who is my all-time absolute favorite audiobook narrator. I love his voice. I would listen to him just read a grocery list. He is so good. So I literally got this from the library because it was read by Dion Graham, rather than having any interest in the actual story. But then the story was also good enough that I then bought a physical copy so that I could reread it. It is about a man known as Tracker, because he has a nose. He can smell and track people based on their smell. He is gay. His best friend is a leopard shapeshifter, and he is hired to find the king's sister's missing son. There's lots of intrigue. The story is told in a non-linear fashion, so that does take a little bit of like paying attention to catch exactly when everything is happening. It really worked for me, but I've seen a lot of people that it did not work for. It's also brutally violent, just on page, very graphic. There's essay, there's everything. There is every trigger warning that you can think of in this book. So if that is something that is off-putting for you, this is not the story for you. I absolutely loved it. It's set in a sort of Pan-Africa, right at the beginning of the slave trade. So there's a lot of like African mythology, monsters that I was unfamiliar with. I really, really enjoyed it. That being said, I have been trying to read book 2 for months now, and it's a slog. I think because I don't like the main character the way that I really liked Tracker. And a lot of people's big complaint about this one is that they don't like Tracker. So, yeah. Highly recommend. It was a 5-star read for me, but I have caveats. Okay, so How Y'all Doing was a memoir, or an autobiography rather, by Leslie something. I don't remember his last name. So last like August or September, I checked out every audiobook my library had available that was a memoir with the LGBTQ tag. So for that, I ended up reading How Y'all Doing, Unprotected, and The Best Strangers in the World. So The Best Strangers in the World was by Ari Shapiro, who's an NPR host. Friggin' love him. Unprotected was Billy Porter, who's a Broadway performer, singer primarily. How Y'all Doing? Oh, I wish I could remember his last name. So he was an actor. He actually did pass away a couple of years after the book came out. It was so cute. He sounded like this just adorable tiny old man, and I wanted to like put him in my pocket and keep him forever. Yeah, it just seems like a sweetheart. Unprotected was much harder to read because it was the story of growing up as a very poor black man, gay black man, trying to make it on Broadway. He was homeless for large periods of time. Just not the easiest read in the world. There's lots of anxiety in his book. Yeah, The Best Strangers in the World. It's about Ari Shapiro. If you know who he is, you'll probably enjoy it. If you don't know who he is, it's probably not going to be that interesting to you. Oh, Naturally Tan. That was the other one Naturally Tan is by Tan France from Queer Eye. And again, if you love Queer Eye, you're probably going to like the book. If you're not into Queer Eye, you're probably not going to like the book, which was kind of how reading Jonathan JVN's books went for me too. And oh, I have a couple more autobiographies on here. We'll just do all the autobiographies. Ola Papi was, I can't remember the author's name at all on that one either. But he is a gay man, half Mexican, who has an advice column, I think, for like Grindr or something. I don't know. To be honest, I don't remember that one very well. The byline was how to come out in a Walmart parking lot. And it's the story of basically growing up gay and biracial in a small white town. If that sounds interesting to you, you'll probably enjoy the book. There was nothing particularly stand out for or against that one. And then the last autobiography that I read was Me by Elton John, and that one I highly recommend. If you like celebrity autobiographies, this one has everything you could hope for in an autobiography. It's got the rise to fame, it's got the drug use and the wild parties and the casual name dropping, and those are all the things that I love about celebrity memoirs, so that made it very fun for me to read. He has lived a wild life, and it does cover from when he was a little kid all the way to basically the present. I think he wrote this at the beginning of the pandemic. Okay, since I've gone completely out of order. Okay, so Galaxies and Oceans is available on Kindle Unlimited. I picked that one up because at the end of last year I was looking for a book by an Australian author because I wanted to say that I had read a book from every continent except Antarctica. Excuse me. I haven't even had my coffee yet this morning. That's how much I'm trying to beat the heat and get this filming in. So Galaxies and Oceans is a romance. It is a male romance, but it is written by a woman. I know that the fetishization of gay men is kind of an issue, and this did sort of feel like it fit that bill a little, just a little uncomfortable, but the story itself was really good. It starts off with our main character escaping from a domestic violence situation, and he basically fakes his own death. This is all in the first chapter, so these are not spoilers. Fakes his own death, leaves everything behind, and now is just traveling, doing odd jobs, getting paid in cash, that kind of thing. He ends up finding this small town that he likes. He feels comfortable there. There is a man and our main character is very into looking at the stars. And then our other point of view character is The Lighthouse Keeper. So that's where Galaxies and Oceans, the name, comes from. This book is very spicy, like much more than I would typically pick up. So, reader beware. If you like spice, then you'll probably like it. If you don't like explicit spice in your books, give this one a pass. But otherwise, it's just a really cute romance, and it is available on Kindle Unlimited. Okay, and then we have Raven Song by TJ Klune. This is the second book in the Green Creek series. There's 4 of them in total. We'll be talking about the first book in the bisexual video. So this is book 2, Raven Song. Paranormal, werewolves, fighting bad guys. This one is a werewolf and do they call them witches? I don't remember. Yes. Yeah, they do call them witches. So our main character is the witch of the Bennett werewolf pack. Yeah, you do want to read book 1 before you pick up this one. The stories do build on each other. It's not a series that you can read out of order or as standalones. But I liked the book. It's not great literature, but it's entertaining if you're into werewolf fantasy stories. Slightly dramatic. Okay, and then this is my current read that also is about a gay man. This is Goliath by Toshi Onyebuchi. Yeah, I'm barely started, like barely started, but enjoying it so far. Looking forward to reading more. Hopefully by the end of July I will have finished this, and then when I do June and July wrap up, I can include it in that video. So yeah, that's what I've got for books with gay male characters. It was really one of the most interesting observations for me, was looking at what queer characters I gravitate towards and what I tend to buy versus getting from the library. So if you watched my lesbian video, which, I'll link somewhere, that one I owned every book with a lesbian in it that I read for the last 12 months I purchased, which I just find very interesting because I would not have thought that that was true, because it feels like I read the same amount of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans, but the reality is that I lean very heavily lesbian, bisexual. Who knew? Alright, so that's all I've got for this one. For me, it's just going to be a second. We're going to roll right into filming the bisexual book recommendations video. For you, I will probably make you wait a week before I put out the next one. So, have a good night. Stay safe out there, y'all.